isn't it?
I got it.
We're live.
All right, this is the facilities meeting for July 14th, 2016, at 6:30. In the room with me from the board, we're represented with Denise Brooks, Ed Tate, Jerry Grupp, and Eddie Watt. From the administration running the show in terms of talking about facilities will be Doug Taylor. He's accompanied with Robert Frazier, and doing our technical services tonight is Matt Frederickson. There is no member of the public watching present. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a lot to cover tonight. I'm going to go as quickly as I can. There's not a lot of planned discussion items or decisions that are needed tonight, other than the master planning piece that we'll touch on near the end. But as always, feel free to ask any questions you have, and we'll stop and do whatever we need to do. Not a problem at all. So we have energy management we're going to touch on, an update on the Newtown Middle School and Clark Middle School projects, capital improvement update. I want to touch on the 5-year planning for capital projects and how things look as we move through 2021. Service maintenance bids that will be on the board agenda for the 21st of July. And as I said, just revisit master planning. Since it's been a while since we talked about that. So, Energy Star Energy Report, we are holding the 80 score for Energy Star, which is very good. We were once at the 86 mark when we were as tight as we could possibly be when this was first rolled out, and Aramark was here every single day bird dogging this. 80 is a very good score, but we're going to continue to work hard to make that score better, and we're making a lot of efforts to do so. I meet with Aramark Energy representative each week, and he goes through, he's performing different tasks, he's trending, he's visiting sites, he's doing what he needs to do, and reporting back to me. And we're working with our staff to resolve things that are being identified. So these were the things we talked about at our last meeting. All of those items that we talked about at the prior facilities meeting have been resolved. We made those changes. The June retro commissioning efforts at Rolling Hills Elementary School, there are zones within the building that were observed to be controlling the temperatures, again, outside of district standards, less than 76 during cooling season. So it was cooler than it should have been. We found the thermostats within the building are incapable of communicating with the air handling units on the roof. So we have to do some investigation and replace some controllers and do some reprogramming to get those things back on track. So that will happen. Holland Elementary School, while simulating the call for dehumidification in each of the packaged rooftop units, we learned that they didn't react as designed. The compressor serving the unit remained off along with the respective gas reheat. So that affects dehumidification in the unit. We're not getting that gas reheat. So contact the manufacturer to verify coordination with the backbone of the building control system so that the system is capable of responding. So we'll work with Johnson Controls to get that addressed. Some of these things sound more complicated than they truly are. It's really a lot of just building control system, building management system tweaks.
Why are we like discovering that now? Like why would we have not?
There were things discovered when the building was first built and commissioned, and I don't know if there's adjustments made to some of these things as time goes on.
The Rolling Hills situation, like why now?
There's no one sitting there going through every single building, through every single unit, looking at every point in the controls to see if everything is functioning exactly as it was originally intended to function. So that's
So it's not like there was a mitigating event, like something.
No, there wasn't something that, just as time goes on, things happen. Sometimes people go into the building control systems and a space is hot. And instead of maybe addressing it the way we should, we go in and we turn something off by hand, we make it comfortable, and then we don't go back and rectify it through controls. And that unit sits in a way that it shouldn't be. So then we find that systems aren't functioning the way they should be. It's all different reasons. Some of it A lot of it's just controls, and the problem with HVAC and controls today is that they become so complicated. They're too complicated for our own good. You buy cars today, so you look at the system, and it's like, I don't even understand what to do. But a lot of the Johnson Controls stuff is actually implemented in certain vehicles, and they actually have controls in cars. But we are working towards resolving these things. The package rooftop units serving the library remain in an occupied mode 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because they weren't responding to the demands that are set up on the building management system. So we have to get the manufacturer to adjust the rooftop unit.
And just to be clear, what that translates to is dollars.
It's dollars, because that unit's running when it shouldn't be running.
In a way that-
Occupied, and
Exactly, that's.
So all of these things that we're finding will ultimately result in cost savings through our energy, and also things that help that store, better our schools. One more in Holland. There were, I think, we might have two more. Per design sequence of operations, the air handling units were to enable economizer control when the outside air is below 50%. So during the testing, we discovered that the valves were set to 40% for 2 units. So we weren't optimizing the outside air the way we should have been. The set points were corrected, and everything is good. So those are units that are just.
So the question was, so how many air handling, just so we have an idea, how many air handling units are in a school like Holland? We're not talking 10.
Well, you could be talking 10 large air handling units
Right.
that serve multiple. In that building, it's different because there's only a couple air handling units. One serves the gym,
Okay.
the large spaces for each of those the gym, the cafeteria, the office area. And then each room has its own individual vertical unit ventilator type system.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out, which was, and the question's the right question to ask, which is how come you discover it now? Part of it is how many units are there that it's just.
Yeah, it's 50,
level of
by the time
detail.
you finish the building, it's 50 to 75 to 80 units.
That's-
Now, at the middle schools, we have different systems. We'll have boilers, chillers, we'll have air handling units with dehumidification, and we'll have heat recovery units along with variable air volume boxes.
Just how many of these.
Hundreds of
units are
those, yeah.
That's,
Hundreds of each building times.
that we're finding twos and ones and twos and.
Exactly. Sounds like we have a big problem.
30 or 40.
No,
Well, then
that's what's gonna get you from the heat
Exactly.
rates.
It's these
Right.
things that we're
Which is
finding.
great.
You know, it's like smog, everybody's got a nicely controlled car, except the one guy who puts out dust and particulate, you can see, that's like 150 cars, it's kind of
Right.
the same deal.
will the new buildings be more integrated in terms of their controls?
The good news with the new buildings is, when we do these projects in the past, we had a independent testing, adjusting, balancing agent that worked directly for us. So the mechanical contractor puts all of his equipment in. And we don't rely on him to tell us everything's functioning the way it's designed to the specification. We have our third-party guy go in and verify those
Right.
things. The level of commissioning and testing, adjusting, balancing in middle schools is much, much higher because of the LEED Gold certification. So there's a lot more that has to happen. There's enhanced commissioning, so it's a much higher level. And we're actually using Aramark, who's helping us find problems to do all of that from the get-go. So why have somebody else? We did bid it competitively. Aramark happened to be the low bid, fortunately. Had they not, and had they been close, I probably would have come in here and said, I would support going to Aramark because they come help us fix problems. Why not just bring them in and help avoid problems from the get-go? So we're fortunate to have them on both of those projects. So the last one is Holland, and it was 2 units that were running in an occupied node 24/7. So this is another point to Jerry's, where little reprogramming on the occupancy sensors were not set up appropriately and will be modified. Facilities improvements updates. The Newtown Middle School project, as far as all the paperwork goes, in really good shape. The only thing we really need to resolve at this point are our building permits, our formal permits. The good news is that the township has been allowing us to just go to town without the formal permit, recognizing that we are processing all of the necessary documents. So everything that they need has been approved by the board or is in process through the solicitors of being finalized.
And your meeting around permit fees has been pushed off.
Yes,
Monday.
our meeting on Monday.
Schedule-wise, everything at Newtown is looking very good. We're on schedule, ahead of schedule in certain areas. All of the site work, the temporary parking lot, storm lines, all the things we need to do to prepare the building for the return of students this next school year is in good shape, or will be in good shape in the next couple of weeks. They are working hard on all of the site work here. A little tough to see, but I'm going to show you a couple images. A very large underground basin that's been constructed up in this area, which is ultimately the new bus loop. So you'll see it, the building pad preparation, and thorn in our side. This is where the unforeseen underground sanitary tanks lived, and we're finally to a point where they're behind us. But I want to show you some of that in these slides. I can't let go of this picture. I just love the big trucks. Utilities, storm and sanitary work is in place. This is a new sanitary line that actually lives below what will be a floor slab and building above it at some point. So this is a very deep sanitary line. This happens to be the water main that serves our site, and we're putting in a tap into that to serve our building. These are storm lines that are being installed throughout the site. This happens to be the new parent drop-off area out in front of what will be the new building. This is in the back corner of the site. This is actually the staging area where all the trailers will live and some of the materials that the contractors may store. It has some temporary access to it to construct it. This is where the old parking lot, tennis courts used to be, where the new building will live. Again, more shots of it and big equipment. This is the new building pad. This is the height that they had to build that pad up, and it continues toward us. That's just kind of rolled off to keep the site tight in case rain comes. This is the building pad to its pretty much its final subgrade elevation. On top of this dirt, we get 18 inches of stone. The contractors will be able to work cleanly in from the time it's down through the rest of the project. So we have a good stone base, and that is actually being placed now. So you can see my back is to Green Lane. This is actually the elevation you'll see from Green Lane. This is the courtyard that we looked at many, many times. The classroom wings that shoot along the sides here. And then back in here's the library, behind it, the auditorium, the gym's over in here.
It's the old football field.
Yeah, this is really football field right in this area. Yep. This is actually a shot of the new auditorium where the floor slopes. That's the front of the stage. It will be refined to the final version. But it's kind of
Having a baby.
it's neat to see.
Yeah.
These are pictures of my kids.
Or in the summer,
As we go with all of these stages, each time we disturb a new area, we have to put in temporary sediment basins. You can see by that shot that, all the silt that kind of worked its way into this, they're there for a month or two and then removed and maybe built elsewhere as we keep moving around the site. So unfortunately, they're cost to spend, but it's best management practice. It keeps the site clean, and it keeps, most importantly, the Neshaminy and other bodies of water clean as we work. Just more action shots of clearing the site out. This is the beginning of the excavation for the new basin that I was talking about. This is kind of exciting. They carve it out, they put in the fabric, the stone base. They then bring in the channels. So we have a header pipe at the bottom, we have the channels that will cross this whole entire stone area, which provide us with capacity. After those channels are in place, they put the stone on a conveyor belt, they conveyor it across the top of the channels and they dump it in between each one so that they're not driving large equipment on it and crushing the channels. Once that's filled to several feet above those channels, they can then begin to drive vehicles on top of it. So that is pretty much with the stone in it. It's a nice aerial shot of them working on it. Here they've completed it, they back wrap it.
And what is, this is under the parking lot? This
This is the new bus, so this will be the bus loop at the back of the building. This is Tyler State Park.
and this is just runoff control,
These catch basins are all on the curb line of the new parking lot in this area. So they'll catch all of the impervious surface that we're introducing here. It's collected, it fills these pipes, and then slowly discharges out this direction.
You did that with a drone?
That's what I was gonna ask.
The superintendent who's managing this from the general contract, but also flies an airplane. So he flies the site and gives us some aerial shots once in a while.
So this is in lieu of an open base? This is.
Yeah, the dates of open basins are kind of behind us. The best management is to try to, this is one that actually is underground retention and then discharged across it through this into Tyler State Park, but at the same or less rate as it used to leave the site.
I just use it from a country comparison to 2002.
Big open.
2002, we built these large open basins in the south,
Right,
which,
yeah.
are buffer in a sense, but when we talk about using this land and what we could use, what we could put on it.
This benefits.
Exactly,
big time,
exactly.
yeah. It's much more efficient. This is the pipe ultimately from all of that being collected, comes into Tyler State Park and into the stone riprap, and it's on its merry way back to the tributaries. This is that area where it was installed, and this is going to be the new bus loop back into this area, building off to the left. As always, things happen to existing buildings as they recognize they're going to be removed or replaced or added onto or whatnot. So found a little sinkhole that faces Richborough Road. Because of where we are with this project, we're going to fill it with earth, backfill it. If it returns, we'll continue to manage it. If it becomes something bigger, then we'll address it, but we don't want to spend much money on that now. This is the area where all of these little lids times 16 little lids were several feet below the ground. So you had no idea that those lids lived there. It's one manhole at the very end. You open it up, it appeared to be a large tank. No one had an idea that it connected to all of the other tanks. So what we had to do was, number one, there was liquid in some of those tanks. So we had a company come out, test the liquid to make sure there were no issues with it. It wasn't contaminated. It wasn't a major issue. So we brought in a truck. They pumped the tanks out.
No bodies?
No bodies. Crushed all of the tanks. They were concrete. Filled that area with large 5-inch rock to a certain point, fabric, and then recycled concrete the rest of the way. This ultimately lives under athletic fields, not under buildings or anything else, but it's finally addressed, and that's good news. Recycling a lot of materials as part of LEED, any of the metal we find, we collect. This is recycled concrete, asphalt, some more concrete. Again, being mindful of how we collect and dispose of materials. It used to be you just see one big pile of collected stuff. Now the guys are very careful. It's the way they manage it. And this is one more shot of the site from our general contractors helping us out with this. The extent of disturbance is quite large on this site. We're touching just about everything. This is Tyler State Park property, so we're not onto that. They're building a temporary parking lot here right now for the returned students, for the staff. And they're going to complete our drive back around here so we still have that connection as we always have. Good stuff. So Holland Middle School, again, in good shape. The one piece of this project that concerns me the most, but not to a point where I'm worried that it won't happen, is the new parking lot construction that has to happen off the Holland Road. The process of getting submittals in, approved by the township, back to the contractors so they can order the materials, have them delivered and start the work was a little slow at the onset, but the township did ultimately get us our approvals. The materials are now delivered to the site, the storm structures, which are custom made for every project, and they're beginning to tear into that. And we have a very good site contractor at Holland, so I'm confident that it will happen, and they assure us that it will as well. But if you see that that parking lot construction is lagging a bit behind, it's because it is. But I think we're going to be okay at the end of the day. Building-wise, we're working away on the tech ed area. That's going to be in fine shape for the start of school. We have performed the demolition inside this area, which was the old tech ed, prepare the building pads where the classrooms are, beginning to prepare the building pads where the auditorium and music suites are, and the old locker room area is going to be demolished shortly. So we're starting to really dig into this building. The parking lot construction I'm speaking of is a smaller area up in here. They are beginning to lay that out and work on it. So I have some shots of the classroom work here, the building pad prep here, and just some general site work. This is the tech ed area where they're working inside the corridor as you come down into the tech ed. The area has been totally stripped of all its existing construction, new furring on the wall for all the new drywall, all the underground utilities are in place, tested and ready to go. So these are really dark in here for some reason. This is the concrete slab. The floor came into this space, we removed it, and now we have new walls around the new retaining wall. Hollow metal frames are on site.
That's kind.
That sounds like.
Hello?
Hi, it's Kyle.
Okay.
Hi, Kyle. This is the old tech ed area. The floor is wet because they've been salt cutting the slab to remove floor area for new underground. This again is part of the existing construction. This used to be 2 classrooms. There was a wall in the middle that's been removed. This is an area that gets renovated as well on the ground level. This is the elevated slab. This is the second floor, that area that I said was being renovated, the pink area. Another shot of the same space. These now look like they were intended to look in the 70s. All those pie-shaped partitions have been removed, and it's one large open space as it was originally designed. Site-wise, they've done a lot of stripping of topsoil, have it stored and stabilized. The trailers are in place, storage. Here's the area where we had concern for the soils conditions. We excavated down the 4 feet that we needed to. We felt we may have to go another 6 feet perhaps below this because we were, based on initial testing, we were concerned. Our geotech engineer came out, tested all the areas around here and said that the area that we found, that we uncovered and proof rolled, is actually suitable for the new structure. We could put the engineered stone, 4 foot of stone in here, and begin to construct our building on it. So we'll be getting some money back for the excavation we don't have to perform. Again, around the building, the same thing. So we're fortunate there. We planned for the worst and ended up better. That's good news. And here the stone is now in place. And
So there are no piers. You don't have to sink any.
we still have along the existing wall the micro piers that have to go.
You have to underput that.
Yeah, because we can't underpin or undermine the existing footing, right? So we still have the micropiles. They did a lot of removal of asphalt. Here you can see all the area behind the gym has been removed and cleared. Next to it, these are the locker rooms that will be demolished, a lot of new construction. And here's the stone building pad prep for the buildup of the new auditorium, music room, auxiliary gym addition. These are the structures I talked about that are now on site, so they can begin to dig in and go to town. And the layout of the new parking lot. So they are working on it. Again, responsible recycling, metals, concrete, recycled asphalt and concrete, pipe and slabs. So those projects are going well. Robert did mention the possibility of going out next Friday in the morning to take a look at things. Right now, the pictures I showed you are pretty much what you're going to see. I think when we get to a point where we have building and we have a lot to look at, we can consider a kind of a Saturday morning visit. When we get further along, some donuts and walk the site and have some fun. If anyone's interested in joining a Friday morning, I can send an invite out. If you happen to be around and want to walk through with Robert and I, I'll just send a general invite. You're welcome to go if you're available. But when we get further along on both projects, we'll schedule some nice weekend tours.
Quick question, please, Doug, on Newtown. One, those abandoned sanitary tanks, does that represent a fairly big chunk of money?
It's something I'll bring to you when I have the allowance adjustments updated. The tank work was about $20,000 for the contractor to break those up, drop them in the bottom. They were down about 15 feet, very deep. So we broke all the concrete up and we used it for fill, but then had to bring in 17 loads of like 5-inch stone and then another 14, 15 loads of recycled concrete. They were very deep, it was very long and large, so not, in big picture,
20 grand.
not a lot. The pumping of the tanks, we have a contract through our general, our capital, our maintenance funds that we utilize for the pumping of the tanks. We had some money in there, so we used it.
The other quick question, traffic has always been a challenge at that school. Is it going to be even worse this fall?
The existing drop off next to the kind of the main entrance by the office is exactly as it used to live. The ability to drive around the building is still there. When that is, we're able to do so. When there's buses there, we don't allow cars to go around it. The parent drop-off down around the bottom where the tennis courts used to be will still remain that area. We're going to paint some arrows so cars will still be able to come in, drop kids off, loop back up, and go out.
Yeah.
They won't have that big parking lot.
They don't have the big parking lot in the back, but we have a new big parking lot on the other side for staff. So we're not going to lose any space.
No, I mean, the way the parents line up in the parking lot where
That-
the work's being done, they won't have that anymore.
Correct.
So you see out.
Line up there now. Right.
You know, like drop. It only occurs to me now that we talked about this. We closed for Rosh Hashanah for whatever days those are, to weekdays. And the synagogue across the street uses those parking lots. You might want to drop a note in advance and say,
They'll be walking from the other side.
Exactly.
The walk's going to change.
Exactly.
We are putting an asphalt walkway up that entire side for our staff, so when they walk from the lot to the building, they can get on an asphalt walkway, so it'll still be manageable.
It's just expectations of people who come to use the facilities all the time.
They'll give themselves an extra 10 minutes.
They'll have to work it out.
Not a problem. We will, before kids come back, send a sketch of the revised layout to parents so they understand how it works, how it looks. The principals will share that with the community for both projects, and we'll work as we go through each phase for fire evacuation plans. Those plans will be updated with each phase so that the principals can, not so much in Newtown, but in Holland, share the revised planning with even Newtown, because where kids used to go outside to stand will change based upon. So we'll continue to update the community on those changes as well.
Just out of curiosity, any idea what those tanks were used for before?
It was sanitary. So before all of the waste from the school used to go in and fill. Then at some point they put this huge leach field in. That was the entire length of the site from where the football field started at Green Pond or Green Lane all the way to the back corner. So that hole was terracotta, and as we excavated, it just broke up and it was not a problem, fortunately. We did test that to make sure it wasn't asbestos contained in the onset, because that would have been nice. So capital improvement project update, not a lot to bring to you at this point, but all the projects are in the works. The demolition of the modular classrooms is completed. Hillcrest, Rolling Hills, Wrightstown is started. I think Richboro still has some, can't remember. But all of that work is moving along, and that's all good news. The wireless infrastructure work is in progress. The camera work associated with security is also in the works. And bid package 4, a lot of the work associated with the railings is in full swing at North. Materials are being ordered for a lot of the other work. The bus garage fueling station is complete. And at Welsh, the roof project is just about wrapped up. So,
Remind me of the,
which one?
the south with compliant handrails. Because
It should be north.
It does say north. What? Remind me where that's.
North was, we are the,
Oh, the stair towers.
yes,
Sorry.
I'll show you.
No, it's not, I just couldn't remember where they came. There you go.
So these are 12 inches apart by code. It should be no greater than a 4-inch spear should not be able to pass through railings. You could lose a small guy on the 7-inch railing. So the progress photos I have are not complete. We did increase the height. The height of the rail needs to be 42 inches for code for someone could, fall over the edge based on the height of a person. We do have now stainless steel handrails going up that you can physically grab onto when you're using a stair. These didn't meet code as far as a hand grabbing onto them. And then we get a stainless steel mesh panel that goes on the outside of those, up the sides, but they're being fabricated right now. So
Is that the new railing on the left?
this is.
No, the handrail. Look at the handrail.
That's new that's all new.
No, on the left where you put the,
The inset.
yeah,
That's new hand,
and that's the code.
yes. An inch and a half diameter for your
No, I'm
hand.
looking at the 12-inch runoff at the end of the staircase. It's just, by 88, it's a 12-inch runoff. The thing is terminated 12
It
inches.
has to terminate in the floor or around the corner into a wall. It can't just come out.
But also it's extended 12 inches beyond the lowest part.
Right. Like
That's just-
that's that.
Yeah, I was concerned about that from a retrofit perspective, that it would extend.
Yep, yeah, that's the
Into
12-inch
the-
extension you're talking about.
Okay.
Yep.
I was concerned that it would interfere with the traffic pattern and create a bump hazard for people.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll bring them in, you'll turn the corner, turn them back, and then they become like a bump, you get.
Beautiful.
Not very exciting, but we have a level fueling pad for the propane powered buses at Newtown Garage, which is beneficial. The roof at Holland Middle, or at Welsh Elementary School, did not have, these are called crickets. We have a roof that slopes to the middle, and you have a line of roof drains. You should have a cricket that directs the water that runs to the middle to the roof drains on either side, so it builds up in between the roof drains. The crickets were really non-existent. So we added crickets. Here you can see the roof slope down to the end. These crickets were added so the water comes, hits this, and it gets to the roof drains. Those things were added. We replaced wet insulation that we found that was problematic. And on the 3 high roofs, we replaced the roofs in their entirety, so we don't have to go back later and worry about those roofs. Those are 20-year roofs, all set. All of the low roof areas, we recoated to get 10 more years out of the existing rubber roof. So you can see the coating. We repaired the seams, we repaired anything that was split open, pulling apart, and then put the ceramic coating on those, and we have a 10-year warranty for all those roofs.
And just those of us who, and that band at the window, that's the new band that we lowered down. It's not part of this project. That's the band we replaced? No.
Yeah, well, we replaced that, we replaced that, we replaced that. Every piece
Every
of
horizontal.
cast stone that you see was replaced with limestone. So that's all replaced, all materials that were replaced. This is Hillcrest, the modulars are no more. So these were removed last year, these were removed this year from this side. They'll restore this. These will also go away from Pico. And we have a nice clean green area for kids to play in. Capital improvement 5-year plan. I wanted to visit this in July instead of waiting until October to come to you and say, hey, here are the projects that I see that we need to consider. There's a lot of discussion about budgets. I don't know where things will ultimately go, but I feel that to be responsible, talk about where I see the needs over the next 5 years. And as a team, we'll make decisions on what's best or what we can afford to do. But I just feel it's important to talk a little bit about routine maintenance, which is basically caring for our a systematic inspection, correction of things, being proactive, and smaller costing kind of things before they become major problems down the road. We do a lot of routine maintenance. I'm going to review that. Capital improvements renewal are basically capital renewal, capital improvement projects, major repairs. They're all the same and are typically funded from our capital funds, not our normal operating budget. I think we all know those things. Some of the routine maintenance kind of things that we do every year, I'll be bringing some service contracts to you at the 21st of July board meeting. Chiller service, boilers, full HVAC, elevator, generators, fire alarm, even our folding partitions, modern folding, come in and take care of the operating of those on a regular basis. Pre-strap septic service work, gymnasium floor refinishing. Every 4 or 5 years, we do a major refinishing. Otherwise, we do just a screening and a new surface to keep them looking good and protected. Kitchen hood cleaning service, sprinkler system, water treatment. There's others, but that's kind of a longer list of things we do in the range of 150 to 200,000 a year to address those types of items. So when you look at it, we're spending roughly 150 to 200,000 in routine maintenance, capital renewal projects or capital improvements, 3 million. So we're looking at an annual cost of 3.2 million. I know that we talked about 3 million annually for these projects, and we've been doing that since around 14, 15. Prior to that, we actually had a little bit more money allocated toward those, and I'll show you that shortly. And that includes soft costs and construction. So we're not putting truly 3 million towards capital renewal. It's less than that when you look at the big picture. So as I've mentioned in my letters when I distribute the capital improvement book, we really should be considering a bit more toward construction plus the soft costs. That's just me advising based upon the formula that I use for capital improvements based on the size of our district. So I want to touch on the formula a bit because that's my formula, and you'll say, well, how do you know that formula is right? Is that really what we should be using? Should we be using something different? There's an organization called APPA, APA. They were the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. They're now APA, Leadership in Educational Facilities, and they use the National Center for Educational Statistics to establish their parameters for capital projects. The National Center for Educational Statistics is a part of the United States Department of Education's Institute of Educational Sciences that analyzes and collects information for public schools, finance information in the U.S. So they're a reputable organization that I reach to see what their recommendations are for capital projects. So there's some basis of comparison. But what I want to say about that is there's also a percentage recognition. I get it. Like if you go to any group in the district, you go to the music folks or whoever it is and say, hey, tell me what we should allocate. They'll say, well, this organization says we should put 3 to 5% away. If you went to every group that does that, we would be in a really challenging place budgetary-wise. So I get that what they're saying of 2 to 4% of the major of the current replacement value is what you should consider. I took that into consideration. That's not the number that I use. So I feel very comfortable after looking at some of the other recommendations on what I've been recommending for the district. So APA formula talks about when there's a backlog of deferred maintenance. That number isn't really the right number. So we're just looking at this in terms of what should we allocate annually for capital projects and routine maintenance. So they're saying 2 to 4%. If you use our 1.8 million square feet, which we have, times $200 a square foot, which is on the lighter side, times 2 to 4% minimally, using their numbers, they're saying 7.2 to 14.4 million annually towards capital projects. So they're saying 0.5 to 1.5 of current replacement value for routine maintenance and 1.5 to 2.5 for capital renewal, which is basically the 7.2 to 14.4. If you're looking at purely capital, they're saying 5.4 to 9 million for capital projects yearly. What we've been using is 1.8 million square feet times 200 times 1 to 2%. So when I say 3.6 minimally, it's 3.6 to 7.2 towards those projects. And that's the 10 elementary schools, the 3 middle schools, and the 2 high schools, which we know is subject to change as we move through master planning. So where those numbers end up, we're all going to figure out together over the next several months to a year. So I'm proud of the capital plan that we have. When I got here 5 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot in place, so we developed the book that we have. And version 1 happened about 5 years ago in 2012. I'll be working on the 5th version for distribution in the next couple months. We do identify major renovations versus capital projects. Plan should exclude new or non-renewal projects such as modular demo, wireless, access points, classroom conversions, etc. The plan should be developed with capital renewal, major maintenance type projects in mind, like paving restoration, roof reconditioning, masonry restoration, things that the building needs as part of the ongoing wear and tear of the building. It should be dynamic, which it is. We update it annually, and we really should avoid deferred maintenance at all costs. So this is a little sheet that I put together that kind of shows in 13-14, we actually had about 4.5 million toward summer projects. Of that, 3.2 million was used towards capital projects. The rest was for non-renewal type projects, so that's the blue. In 14-15, we had 2.2 million total. 1 million of that was used towards capital projects. The blue, again, non-renewal type projects. In 15-16, this year, about 2.4 million, about 1.9 is going towards capital type projects. The rest are going towards projects like the modular demo and other things that aren't necessarily ongoing wear and tear of the buildings. In 16-17, this is where the plan that I have prepared takes us. So in 16-17, there's 2 numbers. There's a construction cost, and then there's a total project cost. So there is in 16-17 about $182,000 worth of non-renewal type projects. And those would be going through the buildings that haven't been touched for wireless access points, converting the computer labs to traditional classrooms to free up space in those remaining schools, if our master plan takes us there. That's what we talk about doing down the road. There's about $800,000 in the red, which is basically deferred maintenance projects from this past year. Those primarily were for this building, and I'll touch on those in a minute. The rest are pure capital renewal type projects. 17-18, the numbers go down a bit, but then they begin to creep up the next 3 years. I can go over that list in a moment. But I just want to show kind of where we've been and where we need to go. Yes.
So I'm confused about the 16-17.
Okay,
So,
that's next year. That's not this summer, that's next summer.
so it's next summer stuff. So we just did the budget though for 16-17, and we had everybody cut 7% of what they were currently spending. So,
It doesn't change what the buildings want.
so you're just saying this is what
It's not
That's on the
necessarily,
budget.
these
is not from the budget, it's not money we've budgeted.
are not part of our
Operating.
operating budget. These are capital renewal type projects that,
Well, we paid for them with leftover leftover operating money. So in essence, we have funded them with operating money up until now.
correct,
Okay.
yes.
So you're not, are you or are you not saying that's what you're proposing for next summer?
What I'm saying, I'm gonna show you a 5-year plan as I looked in the book of things that are becoming tired and ready for work. These are the projects that are coming up in front of us that if we don't look at now and we defer, will cost more down the road.
Okay,
How we ultimately, decide to do those projects or not do those projects is something we'll all talk about. But
but that's not your current proposal for next summer.
it's, right now, if you were to say, what should we do next summer? I would say, these are the list of projects we should consider for next summer.
My problem with that is, Doug, we cut 7% of everything in the classrooms from what was spending today. So we didn't even look at half the things people thought they needed or they wanted. I'm not really sure why we do it differently when it comes to facilities. There is a lot of things that needed. This isn't like your personal wish list. I completely get that. But to me, if we've gone through a year where we say there's a 7% cut to everything from what you're currently spending, then that's the proposal I need to see from you, telling me by delaying these things are gonna cost you more. Got it. I think that's good information, absolutely information we should have. But at least for me, that's the frame, we should be working in a consistent framework across the district. So if that's kind of where we draw a line in the sand, then I think, for me at least, at some point that's, and this is a first pass and tell us, what's gonna happen if we don't do it. Got it, but that's why I was like, is that what you're telling us today, or is that what you're proposing we do for next year? Because for me, proposing what you do for next year has to be consistent with what we did in the classroom, and that was cut.
Well, all I can say is the buildings don't stop.
I think that's what he's saying, is
Getting
that
older,
he's
it-
talking about what happens if we defer it.
Yeah,
And then it ends up costing more money.
But I'm not gonna sit here and decide what gets deferred, right?
I'm not-
I'm
No,
gonna
no, I
say,
think that's what you're trying to.
I'll show you the list of projects for each of the next 5 years. And if we're deferring work, if that's what the board's final decision is based on finances and where we're headed, then we have to figure out what we're not doing, what gets pushed to the next year, and
right, that's the decision
But
I
I
don't
can't
wanna
tell
make.
you
I don't know whether
which
to
one's
move this pipe or that pipe. I don't wanna make, I'm good with saying to you, I wish I could give you that money. If I had it, I'd give it to you, but I don't. And so here's the limit, but I don't feel like, outside of having a minor opinion generally, that I could decide between windows here and a pipe over here.
Well,
Right.
that's where I think he presents this, because I hear what you say, that everybody had a 7% cut. But, if you bought the buildings and you don't maintain them, and that was 20 years ago with a certain type of board on the maintenance wasn't done on the buildings, and things didn't get done. And it took a while to rebuild, and that's where you get to.
That's not a problem. Don't disagree. It's a problem.
No, I understand that. So I don't know that, I hear you
You
say.
gotta cut more out of the classroom then, so we can fix the building. You engaged in the conversation.
I know.
This is
but
how I have one.
But my point was, I wasn't done talking yet, that was the conversation. My point was, I understand your point about 7%. I don't know that I always agree that all expenses get treated the same way, because some expenses are not avoidable and some are. I think it's just, this is going in and understanding what it is. That's all it is.
I'll show you what the list of projects are. We can, look at it together and.
Could you just read the total numbers? I can't read that chart from back here. Just for 3 years, next year, the year.
So 16, 17, total project, that means professionals, contingencies,
Right.
everything else, they're big. So 5.5,
Right,
then it goes to 4.2, then it goes to 6.7, 7.9, and 10.6.
thank you.
I think the issue was, you said, why are we treating it differently? Not buying a book next year, deferring the purchase of a book, okay, does not mean our students have no books, right? So yes, obviously we want to do that. But I think what Doug's trying to illustrate is not repairing a roof where next year it might be part of a 5.5 million. The deferral of that could mean later that 5.5 becomes significantly more, or an emergency.
It could
So
be-
it is different,
or
but
a
I-
domino effect. Right.
But it's up to us to decide, based on what he says, if we accept it or not. And I agree, I don't want to say move that pipe here or whatever, but it's hearing how he's evaluated where the priorities are and whether or not we agree with that timeline.
And then we also don't have to think about it the way we've traditionally done it in terms of, here's a net positive to our budget, we're gonna roll it here, we're gonna do it there. We have a capital operating budget that we have if we wanted to not spend that $3 million a year, or couldn't spend that $3 million a year because it's better served in Bedford. We can borrow against it and have a 5-year capital plan that we're.
Well, I think part of his point is we might not. If we don't come in under budget, we won't have $3 million out of operating, or $4 or $5 or $10 million out of operating to fund it.
That's my point. So let's understand what needs to be done and then figure out
Yeah,
the
and
best way to.
I started
It's
with the
also
first
the reason
question,
why I
is
come to
this
you in
just a big
July.
picture of what needs to be done, or is this your proposal for next year?
No, this is just big picture.
That's all, that was,
That's.
if that was the answer, that would have been the end of the question.
That's the answer. And so Doug will come back October, right?
October, November.
So we'll come back October, November, that's the point in time where it won't be a big picture anymore. And that's also the time that we're really starting to put the beginning shapings to the overall budget together, the 2017-18 budget together. So at that point, we're starting to nail things down.
Well,
This is good for context in the 5-year projections that we've done, because it's easier to understand in this context of this, to look at it as a number and say, okay, I just don't agree with your number.
That's okay, but
So this is good, this is good.
like many things, if I come to you in October and tell you this, you're gonna say, well, why in the world wouldn't you told me this
That's
like
great.
a while ago? So I'm coming to you in July, so that when I come later, wherever the numbers are, it's not a surprise, and say, well, Doug, it really would have been helpful if you.
But, and you started to say it, you cut you off a couple times, which is, this is the unedited anthropomorphic speaking of the building. That the building is, because you said it, the building was.
Right.
And so totally
It's not
unedited.
what Doug wants.
I understand. So
Yeah, this
it's
is-
absolutely the building's voice where the board and the administration.
If I were picking the projects, it wouldn't be the ones that are up here, I promise you. But anyway.
All right, let's go.
So the bigger the deferred maintenance number gets, the harder it's going to be to maintain our buildings at a serviceable level. Deferred maintenance can risk unplanned school closings, failed equipment, utilities. Deferred maintenance can add significant cost of work scheduled through a capital plan. And some formulas suggest that for every dollar you defer, it can cost you $2 to $4 later, which is kind of what you were saying. And that comes from the domino effect and other things that can happen by not doing something when you should or when it's the best time. So when I talk about the projects that were red on the chart for next year, I continue to we talked about maintaining a $3 million number this past year. We pulled Chancellor Center's roof and masonry repairs off of the list. If you go outside the doors and look, you'll see some stones that are actually disintegrating beneath the stones that live above. The mortar's popping out. The building does have some challenges. I would much rather spend the money on the schools that the kids are in. But at some point, we do have to recognize that even the building we're in needs some work. So I'm worried about the masonry repointing and repairs here, the slate roof, which is the original 1800 roof, and the third floor plaster that is demonstration of what challenges we have with the roof above. So we do have water infiltration, and at some point, we have to look at replacing the roof if we're keeping this building all part of master plan.
Let's be very honest. I think the number to renovate the building from a school to what it is today was $3.2 million, working from memory. And we made conscious decisions at that time not to do the roof because the roof was, a large number. We cheated on the windows. The windows are not greatly energy efficient. They're kind of a monkey with energy efficiency that put a storm window inside an outer window because we didn't want to get into that space. We cut corners on some things. So you're right, we say with it, some of those, no,
But I'm
some will come home to
starting,
roost.
in my lifetime, I'm starting to
The previous
feel some
basement,
of that.
the previous basement exercise is an example of what happened.
The basement is concerning to me. I didn't put that on excavate and put in foundation drainage and pump it up to, lift station, pumping into storm drain. But the water infiltration in this basement worsens over time. The lines are dissolving in the walls and are getting water through the walls. That's not I wish I could fix it from the inside, but you really can't. So, at any rate, some of the other things we have to consider as we move down the road, and this kind of plays into the master planning as well. And the reason why we haven't done a lot of some of these buildings, Richboro Middle School, we are not doing things to because we know we're taking kids out of it and moving them into a combination of 2 new middle schools, however that all shapes out with redistricting. But there is work that's required, like the roof. So we'll have to decide if we're going to sell the building, keep the building, and how all that shapes out. Newtown Elementary School is shown as minimal cost in the book right now, but in 2019, it will exceed the 60% rule because we will, at 25 years of age, show that most of the infrastructure needs to be replaced. The boilers, all of the domestic, the electrical system. 25 years has kind of been the point where I move everything up in the book to it needs to be majorly considered for work.
Newtown Elementary will be 25 in 2019.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
From a distance.
The guys do a really good job. I mean, before my time and now, all of the maintenance guys do a great job maintaining what we have and extending the life of everything we have. So it's not because anyone's been irresponsible. It's just because the buildings just get tired after a while. A lot of use, a lot of energetic kids, and they're serving their purpose for sure. Now, Hillcrest, Richboro L, Rolling Hill, Sulphidstown, and Wrightstown are buildings that we haven't done a lot to, and I've held off because we're not really sure as we move down what's happening at some of those schools. So once we know, then we can determine what the projects look like in these buildings, whether it's capital projects or something bigger down the road. This is just a point of how we look at the projects. If I look at capital improvements, this is from the book. It shows what's needed, like Hillcrest Elementary Schools, around 15.7 in the book. If you look at the rent cost of fully renovated, it's about 14.5. To replace it's about 18 million. It's at 108% of capital improvements versus renovations. So you have to figure out, what we want to do, big picture in that building. We know Richboro is its own animal. Hillcrest, Newtown L is one that's showing minimal cost, but will pump up in 3 years. Richboro, Rolling Hill, Sulphidstown, and Wrightstown are the ones I talked about that are creeping up in percentage. So the list of 5-year projects that I talked about, I used an inflation factor of 4%. I show the summer of 16-17 Council Rock High School South roof coating. Just to coat that roof, to minimize that from total roof replacement, still a construction cost of about $2.1 million. The floor deflection issue at South, I don't anticipate needing, but it's $30,000. South and north parking lot maintenance, it's ongoing. We go in, we do crack repairs, we coat it, we put the striping back. It lasts a few years, and you have to go back and do it again. If we don't do it, that's okay. But then we're going to have to ultimately repave those spots sooner rather than later. It does extend the life of the asphalt. They're not exciting projects, but they're things that help extend the life of what we have here. Domestic water piping at North, there are problems with cast iron pipe in that building in the lower level that weren't replaced when the building was renovated. I don't know why, but I own it and I have to maintain it. So I'm not going to go through every item. But you'll see as you look, and I can get you this list in paper copy so you can look at it on your own later. Synthetic floor is very tired. The Hillcrest needs to be replaced. We have wireless that we talked about as part of our master plan for a series of schools. That's what the blue toned value was on that chart that I showed you earlier. Richboro L has the same synthetic floor. Carpet in the boardroom is something that was on the list. Parking lot maintenance at Richboro L, and these were the 2 deferred projects from this project. What this shows you, though, is if you don't do South next year, 2.1. In 17-18, it's about 2.2. The next year, it's 2.3, almost 2.4, and 2.45. So each year you push this back, even at the 4% inflationary cost, minus the domino effect. Things really creep up. This is the next year's projects, and they're listed on here. Again, nothing exciting, just actual needs, paving restoration, parking lot maintenance, flooring, deteriorated lintels, honeycomb window systems at North, things that are becoming problematic. The last 3 years of the projects, things that are listed on here that we can look at. This is construction, this was soft cost, this is how the total cost was determined.
You're gonna send us this document?
Yes, I'll do that.
So basically, this is just taking your capital improvement book, you use a hierarchy of rating, the sense of urgency, things move up, and once it reaches a threshold, that's when it becomes a priority for you. So that's how you can do this by year.
Right, and it's dynamic, so all of a sudden, something could pop up all of a
Right.
sudden that makes the list or pushes something to be less important than the one before it, we manage it. And we could have ADA issues on that list that are near the bottom, like in the book, like they're, number ones. And then we have an issue where there's some sort of, in the press, things happen in the world and it changes handicap code and all of a sudden there's ones move all the way up to 10.
Well, that's always been this, in my professional life, that's regulatory is always.
You never know regulatory wise what could push. So anyway, what the next steps, I'll update the book, I'll finalize the plan, we'll respond to your comments, direction, and seek approval for projects November, December. And we'll continue with the master planning and see how that impacts all of this and how it all ties together. I just wanted to bring it to you early and not down the road.
Can I make a comment? So I would love for academic standards to do that for academia, for the academic things. And do a 5-year plan of what they think we need for the classroom. And then be able to compare it. So I could say, oh, I'm gonna spend $4 million here and I'm gonna spend this money there. Because deciding this in a vacuum is very challenging. When I say I vote against spending the money and we don't do the roof and the roof caves in, then I'm, gonna look at jackass. So, which is fine. But if I spend money in 2 major places and, and that's my beef, as you all know, and I'm cutting supplies for the classroom 7%, and I'm increasing the money I'm spending on buildings, I need to understand the plan. And I still have asked for, and this is not a criticism, Robert, because I didn't insist on it, and I didn't follow up on it, but I really would like a list of what the leads on the academic areas believe they need. Not what they want to present to us, because they've already cut 16 things. What they believe they need, which is fair. That's a fair way for us to see it from Doug. That's a fair way for us to see it from the academic side. And then I can make a reasonable balance of, if I'm cutting here and I'm cutting there, and this is the spread I have to make a decision on. But making these things in a vacuum is very challenging.
It's an interesting take, but there's, I don't know the point, but it's an interesting take. And I wonder if academics, you can look at it in the same 2 lights you look at the facility.
No, I don't think you did the balance.
Which is, no, which says, which are things that are maintenance? What do I need to do to maintain? And which are things that are improvement? We have capital where we're making improvements.
Yes,
we're changing
right.
things, we may be improving, we built the secure entrance at one building, so like.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, first of all, I'm gonna be meeting with Dr. Elliott very soon after her arrival. And
She's not even here yet.
well, actually, truth be told, I'm already on the calendar. But the thing is, I think it's a worthwhile thing. And honestly, we're gonna have an opportunity to have a professional focus on academics in a way that we haven't had.
Right.
And so that's great. Whether it's not gonna be able to be timed in October and November.
Well, you can't say if you don't buy books, to your point, then what's the cost of next year? The
I
books
think
cost a penny more.
to build
but-
on the point though, what needs to lead that, you can't just go to folks and say, what is it that you want? I think what Dr. Elliott and Dr. Frazier need to think about is assess where we are in terms of our academic performance. What do we think about it? Where are we going? And then what are the investments needed to
Agreed.
make that in order to move academics from here to here? So as we're looking at investments, I don't want to say, let's look at them in a vacuum. I want to look at them against what's the strategy to take our scores from here to here, or to invest in language programs, or whatever it is. So
Right,
just
but
to
the
build-
It's really easy in
Just to build
facilities
on.
to do that. We don't do the roof this year, it's gonna cost us $100,000 more next year. It's less easy to do that in academia.
That's my point, so.
So, but what I think they do every
goals.
year is they
Build
cut
plans.
stuff they believe we need, because they're not gonna ask for something they can't possibly get.
Yeah, but I can't give them an answer unless I understand the goal that that investment's going to, so it's. they
Yeah, so it
tell me
needs a
all they
goal.
want,
It
but-
needs a goal.
But until we understand what.
To your
what
point,
the
is it
goal
maintenance or is it growth?
And to make a decision on whether it's a good plan or not.
And towards that end too, you know, we went into STEM or STEAM, whichever word you choose this week. And the answer is, we went into it realistically like a summer project, because we really put
You're
it
right.
out.
You're
and we
right.
said,
I
it's a summer
follow you
project, we got
completely.
money, let's do it. Where I would counsel and say, if that were to come again, it should be looked at more, if you'll pardon the expression, as a capital project that says,
Long-term
this is a
investment,
change.
permanent,
And
yes.
you know what I'm saying? So that's where we have a change of philosophy. We build a new building, it's a change of structure. We add STEAM or STEM, it's a change of, that's kind of,
It's not work for you,
long-term
Doug,
view.
but if we have to make decisions to say to you, this is how much money we think we can spend, or this, we're making them without a balanced view, and I'm left feeling, as you know, like I've cut 7% out of that, why shouldn't I cut 7% off your current budget and just say, well, you're gonna have to figure out, you know,
I understand.
that could be the wrong decision. It just feels more like you're cutting it at least across all your major things. So better yet, I'm trying to think of a better way to try to make the decisions so I can fund the right things I can fund in that year. And none of this is gonna happen if we don't
but
vote
the,
for tax increases.
the consistent,
Advertising.
the implication of it.
As the painful person who
The
voted for it.
imposition of a consistent 7% cut is the Merchant of Venice persona, you know,
Yes.
in an
Yes.
event. It's only a pound of flesh, but where would you like to take it?
Yes,
It's-
and so because we couldn't make that decision anymore, I think we just said we're gonna cut across we did a lot more cuts than 7%. I'm minimizing it, Dr. Fraser, I'm sorry. But I'm just saying, like, at the end, when we needed a little bit more, we just said, okay, well, we just have to cut from everything.
Some groups
So-
lost just before.
Yeah.
And I heard what you said, you know, it's easier to get these than others, but it is and it isn't, because if petroleum costs go up, all of a sudden that roofing project can like
You
jump.
just,
way.
you
So
can't
never-
put a value on a kid who doesn't read a certain book in English in 6th grade, right? There's, what he
Yeah.
can't. So he still has a book to read, he still learns to read, we still do a good job with them. So you have an ability though to say, well, if it costs this much this year, a 4% factor, whatever it is, it'll cost that much next year. I think it's if you don't do it, impact cost, that is hard for us to do in academics.
But the last
But-
analogy in the same space, which is, we switched to propane. We spent money to do it. It would cost more upfront, but we'll make the money in the long term. I only make the analogy, which is, in academics, this may be go back to the Kindle reader, that we moved to some newer technology. It costs us a little more upfront, because now we're moving to ebooks instead of, which costs a little more upfront, but pays more in the long term. It's that same strategy, if we look at the academic over a little
Well, and
longer term.
To Robert's point, we have to see where this budget starts to take us. I mean, we're not gonna be very far in, but, you know, if we're on that path that Bob presented, it's not gonna be, do you want the e-reader? It's not gonna be, what can you cut that you currently have that you could do without next year? Because that was the projection. Now, hopefully, things get a little better, but unfortunately.
So there's a series of service maintenance contracts that are on the board agenda for next week. Nothing crazy, nothing overly, nothing above and beyond what we anticipated as far as costs go. And they'll be presented next Thursday. A couple extra that will come up, snow removal and salt materials will be did just a little bit later, closer to the cold weather.
You say you brought that up as an review, so.
Yeah, that feels good to bring it up right now.
It's like a freezer.
So the last thing that's on the agenda is master planning. We followed up our original agenda with this just because Robert and I were having some discussions about how things look and if things were to be considered, the timing of last year when we talked about these things, we talked about the potential of classroom additions. And the concern that was brought up was, hey, if that's something that may or may not be considered again, if we don't move forward with that by the December timeline of this year, we'll be challenged to have those types of classroom additions ready for the 18-19 school year. I don't want to be in a position where somebody says, well, why why wouldn't you guys have brought that up? I mean, that would have been good to know in July. So it's July, and I'm telling you, while it's 90 degrees out. So we're going to go over this as brief as you wish, or as much discussion as Robert and the team wants. I'm just going to go through the slides that I had from before. I update, this is the November 12th of 15 facilities meeting agenda, and anything in blue is what I've added to it for tonight. So the routine maintenance for buildings and grounds, the capital improvement book, we talked about it earlier. I'll present that in October or November. I mentioned the 5-year plan should be considered last year around November, and that's what we talked about today. Removal of remaining modular classrooms that were being used for storage, that is in progress, so we're, again, in a good position there. We talked about the ones that are remaining, and again, that's in progress. The action plan for district storage challenge, I think we're waiting for word back from KVK at this point. So we still haven't have a formal time to go view this with the board, so we're
You
working.
should start charging them or something, like,
There are these gonna be.
oh yes, you can store stuff here, we'll get back to you when you can do it.
I see they put their name up on the
Big-
bypass,
big switch.
so,
Is it now?
Yeah.
so I think they're more officially moved in, it's probably time.
I think they've been waiting to,
That's our assignment.
That it's a sign. You know,
they've been probably
Literally.
really busy with other things, I'm sure, so. Develop options for redistricting and 18-19, I should say, school year, so that's, it was 16-17 or 18-19. We did 18-18.
It's all right, it works.
I'm in a hurry.
Surely.
Board discussions relative to full-day kindergarten and grade configuration, we had those discussions last year. Early planning for redistricting and elementary school reduction, so we talked a little bit about schematic floor plans for Hillcrest and Richboro. We said, hey, if it's something that could potentially be considered, we needed to do some preliminary work before the onset of winter last year, which we did. So we have the topo, we have the boundaries, we have surveys, wetland, we have all of that complete. So that's not something we're rushing for a decision on anytime ahead of the rest of this at this point. At that time in November, we talked about at Hillcrest, the potential of 10 classrooms across the back, and same exact building in a different location, Richboro, again, connecting the corridor, creating circulation around that portion of the building. We talked about the budgets at that time, and I presented the overall budget of $6,250,000 per, which Nancy will then owe me lunch.
I made my offer for lunch.
So
Still staying.
Nancy would have to buy me lunch if this moves forward.
I'm not reading.
Is that per site or?
It's two lunches. This was just some of the considerations that there's no need to go through all of that tonight. The timing is very much like the calendar was last year. If there's consideration for the documentation and bidding of this work, you know, a December 16 decision is really the preferred and more ideal, even though now would be the best. December would be the best in terms of pushing it as late as we can. January 5th, losing any time after December 15th really starts to hurt. So it's just the timeline for the consideration. And then that puts us, like all I talked about after that was.
Yeah, I guess this is, if you think about it, though, this kind of is the big decision for the fall this year. When you think about the redistricting work that has to be done around that decision, it's not, that's not necessarily that follows.
Right.
This is just what you want to do with the footprints of the building. I mean, this is kind of like a yes or no, but I mean, we have to debate that a lot, but I mean, this is it, right? This is the core issue that.
It is. We have two phases of this work. One is consolidation. So we're going to end up with 10 schools, 9 schools, 8 schools. What's it going to be? So that's phase 1, and then phase 2 is the district. So phase 1 is the only way we could possibly move to 8 schools is by virtue of putting these two.
It's got to be both editions.
In my opinion, without having thoroughly vetted all this and
Right.
completely gone through it, in my opinion, yes.
So I guess what we're gonna need to look at, just thinking about your timing, at least for me, is, when we talk about balancing the high schools and middle schools, that's the key. So what do those redistricting options look like against closing 2 new elementary schools and building additions versus closing one and not doing that? So I think that you're probably gonna have to show us a few different views, because we're gonna have to make decisions about redistricting.
Right.
That will be dictated by this.
For me, I look at this coming different ways. It just somehow, I just don't like the idea of adding 20 new classrooms to another school as add-ons to the buildings we have. And I don't know, it probably costs a little more to do it. But it makes you wonder about the house tract. And we have local permission to build 2 buildings there. Yes, it is more than $13 million to build a new school. But to build a new school, which would save us some of that option up on that end of the district to put a new school there, it gives us flexibility of pushing, because when you look at the layout of the schools, we're not in the right places for where people come. We are heavy in the Northampton, and we are lighter in Newtown, Wrightstown, the other, operate. We're lighter there. And I don't think I think if anything builds, that's where it builds, and that's where the kids are now. And this whole thing of the Wrightstown, I go to Goodenough, I think there's some merit in just saying, look, close, I expect that we would wind up closing Wrightstown and Rolling Hills. But I think, the whole cascade of pushing they start to pull people out of boundary areas, just out of residential community areas. If you do house, it still preserves the right to build a school there in the future, if we have rights to. And I think it's a better squeeze. I don't know that you have an opinion one way or the other, but.
All I would say to that, without an opinion, is the other cost consideration with that is you don't have to then look at the total renovations of those 2 buildings.
Yeah, that's what I
down the
was.
road. Because that's, we know from the elementary schools we've done, that can be the $18 to $20 million range to go in and fully do it.
You're saying if
If you close 2 schools and build a new, theoretically, you're saving the renovation to $20 million on one and whatever the cost might be in another, and you're putting it in.
I'm rolling it
building.
into one.
Yeah,
The question is how far, this would be a Wendy, how far down the road that would have happened anyway, and I don't know that, that answer.
yeah, you're talking about tacking 10 new classrooms on a building that before too long is going to need extensive renovation. I seem to recall you throwing out a ballpark figure once before in this kind of blue sky conversation, a ballpark figure for an elementary school.
Yeah, look it up, I want to say it was
30.
36 million, but I have to look it up, I could be wrong.
Right, Welch was 18, just rebuilding Goodenough was what, 20?
Yeah, it was in the
25
32
to
to
30.
36 million range.
But it's not in the
So it's
42
like
range of the middle school.
Right, yeah, it's less expensive than the middle school, for sure.
Yeah.
That doesn't include a trap.
Yes.
For the
No,
record.
You just want to attract lightning bolts, keep going.
I know.
It's.
And by the way, let's imagine that one of those properties, of the 2, Rolling Hills, is more valuable, is marketable.
Yeah.
So if that brings in 3 million,
Yeah,
or 4,
yeah, you hate to layer on more complexity into this conversation.
And that would go back to my question around balancing the size of the districts to get the feeder patterns right. What size school up there would it be? And would we now be balancing, having to pull too much from over there or here? I don't know what the answer is. I think it's worth considering.
I think that, and there's a lot of cart before the horse though on this, because for me, the issue is how much space do we actually need? Based on what we see as a declining or flat enrollment, and knowing that in the buildings that we have right now, I don't know what's changed in your analysis, but back last year, we believe that there were 22 available classrooms that could be captured. So if we have 22 captured, and then we're talking about putting 2 10-room additions, or building another building, we're talking about, and I mean, of course, I don't know how else swings with like efficiencies you gain, but you're getting like 40 more classrooms, which in a declining enrollment, we Do we need them? I don't think we, I don't
Forty
know
more,
that we
but
do.
you're replacing what's in.
10, 19.
Yeah, you're
Right, so I mean,
replacing
okay,
some portion of
okay,
it.
so we have 35 classrooms. We have 35 available classrooms, we don't even have students to put them in. So I don't want to create these situations like we did, you know, with Holland Elementary, where we put this on and now we have, you know, we're at 60% capacity or whatever the number is. We put additions on buildings, I want to understand who we put in there. Because that
That's like
speaks
one of
to,
the-
right, so, but I mean, before you even talk about the space, I want to get a firmer handle on, is that number of 22 classrooms still valid, or where are we at with that? If our enrollment's declined, is there even more space? I don't know. And then, understand where the pockets are before we start putting more real estate into our footprint, because the kid, you know, if you build it, they will come. They're not coming if there are no kids in the system.
I would be very careful about the Holland 60%. That's a body count number. That's not a program number. It's a body count number. The kids who are in there, because of their needs and requirements, have different needs and requirements. So programmatically, it's not 60. Programmatically, it's much higher.
We put
percentage.
those programs in there because the efficiency of that building was
Anywhere
very
they would
small.
be,
Okay,
it would
let's
be
just
distributed.
agree that you can put probably 200 more kids, even with those programs, into
No.
that building.
No, you can't.
Okay, it's not anywhere near its capacity. There is room. We had identified, I think, 4 empty classrooms or something in there that, even with luxurious use.
It's not
But the
200
point,
kids.
okay, we don't have to belabor the particulars. The bottom line is, though, is that we have X number of students in the district. We know what birth rates are. We can have some projectability of where the increases are. And if we have 22 classrooms that we can capture in the district, based on our enrollments, do we need to then
I agree.
add on 20 more classrooms?
My comment would be, I know we converted some of those classrooms already that we were counting as empty because we paid for them. So me and my money memory says we paid to convert a couple of the labs.
Computer labs.
Yeah, so,
Right,
but
that's-
I
I want
don't think it's like significantly different, but 2 or 3 of them we put money in the budget anyway to convert. So we probably need a new count. For me though, I'm completely outside of this whole discussion. I don't like the timing. We're building 2 major middle schools. We have $110 million worth of projects going on. Make do with what we have. Use it as efficiently as you can. I can't fathom taking on more capital projects at this time. And I still am not the person who says, we're gonna redistrict this once for 2018-19, and the world's gonna stop spinning, and then it's gonna be perfect, and we're gonna be done with redistricting. So I think I understand and appreciate the fact that building the elementaries, redistricting to there, have them feed up, and then the world becomes an easier to manage place. But we have a lot of capital money out right now. We have a lot of financial issues. And taking on even things that mean short-term more money out, maybe long-term savings, for me, I gotta get to the point where I see the savings from Richboro Middle School. They're gonna come someday, but in the meantime, I borrowed a lot of money.
For
Borrowed a
me,
lot of
we
money.
had a conversation last December or January, what it was. I don't necessarily think, I didn't even vote for the testing and things because I didn't want those additions then. I don't actually see that anything's appreciably changed in the ensuing months, other than, we have to fine tune, is it 22 classrooms or 19 classrooms? What is this year's enrollment? Where are the trends? Where have we captured efficiencies already and stuff like that? But in the big picture, I don't think anything appreciable has changed for me, at least from the last time we had this conversation.
No, I think what we're trying to do is understand the decision we had to make, which is around the buildings. And then Doug's got a timeline to work on, so I think this discussion is around here, some of the things that we need to see in order to get to that decision point. So what we need to see is an update on the work that we've already done and flush through the different options with the goal of balancing the district. And then that should, those options should come
Right,
out.
but the immediate thing is a December 2016 deadline, which is,
No, but we're talking about the things that we need to see and get way out front so they can kind of stage, or we can stage our board meetings and our facilities meetings to make sure that we're able to make that decision by that date.
But the question is, if we're not interested in this option, so what I hear from Wendy and what I think I hear from Denise is we're not even interested in entertaining these 2 10 classroom additions. If that then is the will of the board, good enough, that sets Doug and myself in a direction that we don't actually need to operate with December 2016 as a deadline.
Like-
the work goes, but that doesn't become a deadline.
In all
And we
fairness,
sort of more go with May, June 2017 as a deadline for this particular decision with redistricting to follow.
in fairness, these votes on this kind of stuff have been so close. I think you would need 9 of us in a room to commit to a set feeling before. As much as I hear you, 2 of us are only 2, and if 7
Sure.
people are like,
Yeah.
I think it's,
You're talking about $500,000 or $600,000 in annual savings to close that second building.
Right.
So that's something I'm interested in getting after, because we got a lot of capital money.
I'm not
I think we
opposed
have
to
that
saving
discussion.
money. That's-
I'm not saying that I
you guys
agree
gotta
with doing
spend to
that,
save
but
it.
I want to see.
You got a 7-year return if you spend
But-
13 million.
But Joseph,
That happens in 18.
Well,
Yeah, it
You
does.
get
If you close-
$500,000 back, you're gonna
close
spend
2 buildings.
13 million. You got a 6.5-year return.
I
You
know,
gotta wait
but
6.5 years to get that money back. That's like,
I'm borrowing that
this
money, I'm
half?
not spending that money on my capital.
oh, well then you have more than 6.5 years because you're gonna pay interest. It's true. It's $500,000 a year. You got a 6.5-year return on that.
I get that, but you want to tax people year in, year out when you don't have to?
do you want to
So-
build, I mean,
So again, I'm not saying that we have to do it, I think what we have to do is we have to look at it, because at the end of the day, balancing the district
I do
is the
disagree.
important way. I don't want to put us in a situation where we've made a short-term decision because we don't want to mess with it.
Right, and I don't mind looking at it,
Right,
it's just
right,
too much
so-
stuff at one
right.
time for me. That's what, we've already in this huge spending mode on this huge project.
The
Taking
issue-
on more is too
the
much.
issue is we have control over, how we all talk about this.
Right.
The immediate thing, if I'm hearing it right, is just the December 16 deadline, if we want those additions to coincide with the opening of the middle schools. We could do the additions at a later time and
Exactly
do
my
it
point.
whatever.
It's just a decision date to have our plan done. We look at this thing every year.
But the 3 of you all said you wanted to see it, and 2 of us said we didn't, and you gotta ask what everybody else wants. Sorry. Well,
At
I
the
don't make-
risk of digressing a little bit further, I think it's relevant though. The question has popped in my mind again about our enrollment projections, because I just had yet another subdivision that I hadn't seen before
Yeah.
going in Northampton. Are we confident in our enrollment projections that with the changing real estate market, things haven't changed?
We just got a new
It's such
report
an insight.
last week.
Yeah, this is just updated the development portion of that report, so they're looking to finalize that.
I have not had a chance to get through.
So that's dynamic, we can,
And
we're
It's
on
an
it.
annual.
We're on it.
there was a great deal of building in Northampton between 93 and 2002.
Right.
And the problem also is that you had that big wave, and just like every wave in a pond,
Yeah.
those homes are going to now start to turn over quickly because those kids are gone, long gone, and you're gonna get the second ripple. So there's gonna be another come. There's gonna be another.
Well, that's happening in my neighborhood, which is 17 years old,
That's exactly
but I'm
right.
referring to a new subdivision I just saw in Northampton, a new subdivision that's going on,
Where was
Just
it?
down the
What street?
just past him,
Hatboro Road,
Hatboro Road.
yeah, $1 million homes going
Yeah.
like hotcakes.
Brandon, I
Unbelievable.
just spotted, it. There's a new subdivision on Stupeville near where I live, Toll Brothers subdivision.
Well, that's
So-
Husky stuff.
I don't even
That's,
want to think about that.
that's Brunswick, right? That's in the Tigers.
No, single family homes, on the front.
The $1 million homes are good because they'll pay the taxes, they'll pay the earned income, and those are not typically households that send kids to public school. So we get the
So they have
revenue.
Council Rock South painted all over the same
But the
house.
short answer is, we're on enrollment,
Yes.
you're on enrollment.
In fact, we just added this residential piece this year.
Great.
So They've been working on it for us, and the report just came in.
Look, for
I
me,
tend to agree with you, Ed, I think there's another.
Through Decision Insight.
That's what Jerry was saying.
for me, it's, I'm not gonna be afraid of looking at numbers. That, I think that's what we have to look at again, we just have to look at it. So as someone said, there were 2 who were no's, there were 3 who were, I'm not saying they're yeses, I think the 3 who say their analysis, so the analysis bears.
I mean, and to be
Kyle, you
clear,
want
I won't
to
look at the
comment?
numbers, but I don't think that any of the numbers
No,
have
no, no,
appreciably
it's-
changed since
That's
last year.
that's fair.
So,
They have it.
Kyle, you still there?
And I don't have a reason to think they have.
She fell asleep, but she's on the phone still.
Kyle?
Here. I had you on mute.
That's okay, did you say anything great?
What did you say?
Did you say anything brilliant on mute? That's when I say my best stuff. Do you have an opinion on, do you want to see the numbers, thinking that you might want to see them towards potentially making a decision in December? Or are you of the mind that you would prefer, that you don't think this is the time to do it?
To add the 10-room classrooms.
I did not think this was the time to do it when we discussed it the last time, and my position has not changed.
So, sitting here today, it's 3 and 3, and you still got 3 more members to figure out what you want to think.
Very good. Thank you.
I will make one caveat.
We want to see that.
The way I heard you guys present it is, does the board want to look at it? If you've looked at something that causes you concern, and I'm sitting here and saying no, and you're thinking, that's foolish, she should see this, I value your opinion, but I'm just saying, if you're just saying, should we recreate it because you guys feel you need it, my answer is no. But if you saw something in the data that said, I think you should see it,
We'll
No
let
harm.
you know if that's the case. I certainly appreciate that. At this point, we're just doing due diligence.
okay.
So, but if that becomes the case, we'll let you know.
So these are just the fees associated with this work. Reducing the LSAT lease, we've done so, we removed central warehousing from LSAT, and we reduced it further when we removed the not from LSAT. So all those things have moved forward. Repurposing 20 Ford Road is something that's part of a bigger master planning discussion. Middle school projects we talked about, they're both in progress.
Would it be possible, as you show us these updates and we're checking things off as done, talk about even if you don't have the initial work, so here's the forecasted savings from this action, or the forecasted cost. Can we kind of look at that through the recap just to see, here's what we said we were gonna do and here's how it's going on? Because I think it'd be helpful to
Work with Bob on that.
here we spent a pile of money relocating the knock, what's that really start to save us? And then we're looking at it next year, what did it save us? And it tells a good story.
Signed off on today's July rental payment, so I saw the savings for myself today.
There you go.
That's good. And then the big one is Holland Middle School and Newtown Middle School renovation and what that means to the Richboro Middle School property. And that's something we said a year before it closes, we would kind of determine what we're doing for
And we
repurposing.
have our flags up for dates to follow the process to close that school, so we don't get in trouble. We don't miss anything.
Yes, absolutely.
And that
Brings it to me.
means it's Nancy.
The public.
Does the board have any other questions?
So I was gonna ask when we would go from-
It's tough, I was especially like the fact that we're starting to look at everything more long-term. And then the academic piece. Dr. Elliott said it was great.
For the people not here, I'm
Maybe we
Nancy
can
Carroll,
second.
Newtown
I'll
Borough.
remember that for.
Question number 1 is, I'd like to get an understanding, I don't want to use your time right now, but the fields on both projects, when will they be in use? Like, if they don't have them now, when will they have them? You made a remark at, I think at the board meeting when we were just discussing tracks that the fields have to lay and sit. You know, I don't want that now.
Go for a growing season. So basically 18-19 is when we start this.
Okay, so every field at both schools displaced till 18-19.
No, Holland Middle School still has fields that they can use.
Okay,
at the
well, I'd
bottom.
like to understand from somebody that's in charge of where they're going, where are they practicing, how are they getting there, where they're playing their games. just as it's an interest to me. If it's not an interest to the board, I'll send somebody a note. Maybe I can interview one of the new guys that got hired, that, you know, are the athletic directors.
We work to develop a plan, Tim Long and Barry and myself and others that are involved in athletics, so we can certainly provide a general description of how that works.
You know, I've been coming to meetings a long time, and the track was the first time I was aware that North didn't even have its own track, and that the middle schools didn't have track. That's not your fault, but now I have an interest that I didn't have before in what's going on. That's all I'm saying. Number two, what are they doing at Goodnow this summer in the cafeteria and the auditorium?
At the cafeteria at Goodnow, they're just putting acoustical treatment in that space. They're putting acoustical panels on the walls because it's noisy.
Yeah. Auditorium?
No.
There's no other.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Nothing? Okay, well,
I'm
the
sorry.
north rails are out of code. Maybe Jerry might know this. When we did the renovation there, why was that missed, or did the code change?
Code changed from when that building was originally,
We weren't
It
working
was
in that.
renovated like 2005.
We weren't working in that space, so there was no obligation to bring it up.
I thought you had to bring the whole building up.
No, it had to do with the sections you were working in. We weren't working it. You had to bring the whole building up to code for ADA if you go beyond some marker. But there are other aspects of a building, of a building that persist. You don't have to bring the whole building up. There are aspects of the building you don't have to fix.
I just wonder, thank you. I think there needs to be a very long and good discussion for the board and maybe for the public, how you fund the capital budget, what the difference between a capital budget and a budgetary item, and then list all the expenses in the regular budget that you know are going to increase, like salaries or healthcare, or like committed increases or decreases, so that people get a hold, because I think during the track discussion, people were very confused about what it would actually cost per year in the budget if you would have done those tracks. And the same here now with the $6 million for the additions. I think there is confusion among the public. I always think of one as like my mortgage and the other as my, operating expenses. But I think there needs to be, a further discussion. There seems to be confusion on that. How did you pick 4% as the inflationary cost?
yeah, there's actual historic data, and it's updated per quarter to show where the construction industry is in terms of percentages for
Right.
increases. So
And when you showed those renovation costs, did that include the start costs or just the renovation costs?
the six,
That were going up, those columns that went up every year?
the 5-year plan
Yeah.
showed the construction costs and it showed the total project cost.
Okay, I understand that 5-year plan's a draft and you don't maybe want it up on the web or, anywhere else, and there's paper copies. I'm wondering if I could get a paper copy of
Yeah, I
that.
mean, it's a draft, it's gonna
It's
be,
gonna be in the minutes?
it's a
Yeah,
draft
it's the slides
copy
are.
at this point, it's definitely on the slides, so
Okay.
it is.
Next, okay, 9, I agree with the assessment that we really need to understand where we are in academics and where we're going before we do any analysis of what needs to be done. Number 11, forget that.
Do we have any more, Nancy?
Option of the new school in the district. Imagine the only place you could build a school in the Northern Division would be on a place that doesn't have any public water or sewer. And if you build a new school in the Northern Division, that leaves Newtown not at capacity, Sulphine-Stone, and Goodnow, because you have to fill it up. You only have 10 classrooms in Wrightstown. If you build a new school, you're gonna build it to some school-size philosophy, and the only way you can fill it up is to bring people from the Southern Division. And I agree with what Andy said at the end of the meeting. which was that most important thing is about balancing the schools, and I believe the most important balance is the two high schools. So if you start there, that you have to balance them there, you'll see what your feeders need to be and maybe where you need the space. Lastly, I agree with the two people who decided we don't need to spend the money on the 10 million. I'd like to see us use the space that we have more efficiently, like Wendy said, and see if we can close a 10 classroom school with that space and save that money for now. And that's where I stand on that issue. Thank you very much. This has been a very informative meeting. I know a lot of work went into it. I know my questions are long, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
All right, that's going to conclude the public portion of the meeting.
Thank you.